What happens when self-defense is against the law? What happens when the protectors become the predators? What happens when innocents are betrayed? The Kingdom of Cambodia has existed for centuries, but after 90 years under French domination, the country is in chaos. In 1975, following 5 years of civil war, the Communist Khmer Rouge seized power. Led by dictator Pol Pot, they set about purifying the country. But ever since a series of earlier uprisings, Cambodia has had tight restrictions on firearms ownership, such as laws restricting the number of weapons, and permits so strict that a firearm owner can't even loan a gun to a family member. Combined with Cambodia's poverty and non-violent Buddhist traditions, these laws ensure that very few Cambodians own firearms or are prepared for any form of self-defense. Anyone who fought against the Khmer Rouge and any civilians who own firearms are forced to disarm the moment Pol Pot takes power. The defenseless people are unaware and unready for what is to come. The Khmer Rouge force mass evacuations of the cities. Believing the evacuations will be temporary, Cambodians neither resist nor take enough food to survive. The move is not temporary. The entire population of the country, those who are not slaughtered outright, is herded onto collective farms to labor without homes, personal possessions, or families. All of Cambodia is turned into a concentration camp, brutally administered. No one can receive mail or phone calls, books, or skilled medical care. All human relationships are shattered. The simple act of saying a kind word to a child is punishable by death. The methodical evacuation and slaughter fit well with Pol Pot's goal: to reduce Cambodia's population from 7 million to about 1 million primitive agricultural workers. Year by year, for the next 4 years, the Khmer Rouge murder Cambodians at a rate 8 times higher than that of Nazi Germany. More than a quarter of the country's population dies before Vietnamese troops invade with machine guns, helicopter gunships, and tanks. It takes them only a month to put a stop to the madness.
Let me make sure that you understand I'm not here representing the NRA. I'm not even a member. Okay? Secondly, I'd like to say that in your opening statements, you commented specifically on my testimony, saying that basically it had nothing to do with this issue. And I had to chuckle because then I noticed you had Mr. Brady up here, who was hit not with an assault weapon but with a .22 caliber revolver. So getting beyond that, I didn't grow up in a house with guns. I don't hunt. I personally abhor hunting. But I was given a gun by a friend when I was 21 to carry in my purse for self-defense, and I was taught how to use it. A couple of years ago, my parents and I went to a cafeteria in Texas on a bright sunny day. We weren't in a dark alley where we weren't supposed to be. And as you all know the story, this madman drove his truck through the window, and he began shooting. Well, immediately, my father and I got down on the floor and put the table up in front of us. And this guy kept shooting. And you're thinking, what could it be? Is it a robbery? That's the first thing that generally comes to mind. And he keeps shooting. It took me a good 45 seconds to realize that this man wasn't there to commit a robbery. He wasn't there for a hit. He was there to simply shoot as many people as he possibly could. Now, I'd like to make something clear. I hear all this talk about how many bullets can go in a clip. I've been there. I can tell you it doesn't matter. It takes 1 second to switch out a clip. You can have 1 bullet or 100 bullets. It doesn't matter, guys. I've been there. He goes, dump, dump. Just like that. That's not enough time to rush a man. I promise you. When I finally realized what was occurring, I thought, I got him. And I reached for my purse. He was maybe 12 feet away. You know, is it possible my gun could have jammed? Sure. Is it possible I could have missed? Sure. But I can tell you I've hit much smaller targets at much greater distances. But then I realized that a couple of months earlier I had made the stupidest decision of my life. I took my gun out of my purse and left it in my car. Because as you well know, in the state of Texas, it's sometimes a felony offense to carry a gun in your purse. I can tell you that I'm not mad at the guy that did this. As he continued, it was obvious that he was a madman. My father, at that point, said, I just got to do something. I've got to do something. He's going to kill everybody in here. And he rushed the man. No way. This guy turned, shot him in the chest. He went down, was obviously mortally wounded. For whatever reason, that made the man change directions and go off to my left. Shortly thereafter, someone at the back of the restaurant broke out a window. When I saw what looked like an opportunity to escape, I turned around and I grabbed my mother by the shirt and I said, come on, we've got to run, we've got to get out of here. And then my feet grew wings and I was out the back window. As soon as I got out, I realized that my mother had not followed me out. And as I learned from the police officers, she had crawled over to where my father was and cradled him until the guy got back around to her, put the gun to her head. She looked up at him, put her head down, and he pulled the trigger. My parents had just had their 47th wedding anniversary. She wasn't going anywhere. As I mentioned, I'm not really mad at the guy that did this. And I'm certainly not mad at the guns that did this. They didn't walk in there by themselves and pull their own triggers. The guy that did it was a lunatic. That's like being mad at a rabid dog. I'm mad at my legislators for legislating me out of the right to protect myself and my family. I would much rather be sitting in jail with a felony offense on my head and have my parents alive. As far as these so-called assault weapons, you say that they don't have any defense use. You tell that to the guy that I saw on a videotape of the LA riots, standing up on his rooftop, protecting his property and his life from an entire mob with one of these so-called assault weapons. Tell me that he didn't have a legitimate self-defense use. Just one final statement. I've been sitting here getting more and more fed up with all of this talk about these pieces of machinery having no legitimate sporting purpose, no legitimate hunting purpose. People, that is not the point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting. And I know I'm not going to make very many friends saying this, but it's about our right, all of our right, to be able to protect ourselves from all of you guys up there.
that force law-abiding citizens to surrender their firearms in a nationwide roundup and meltdown of all semi-automatic firearms and pump-action rifles and shotguns. 640,000 ordinary conventional firearms confiscated and destroyed. A right stolen by their government, promising safety in return for its gun bans.
It certainly didn't do what the government touted it would do, which was to reduce crime. It hasn't done that at all. In fact, there's been more.
Cold, hard facts the anti-gun forces can no longer escape. Armed robberies have skyrocketed, up 69%. Assaults involving guns rose 28%. Gun murders increased 19%. And a new phenomenon, home invasions jumped 21%. An increase politicians insist they can't explain because they're still trying to legally define what a home invasion is.
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny, not to hunt.
And the thing is, Ice-T is historically correct. The Second Amendment is fairly simple, stating, quote, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and to bear arms shall not be infringed.
With lies, myths, and downright stupidity. Next.
Guns are bad, evil, and of course we need more gun control. Well, guns do cause terrible harm.
We have 15 fatalities.
America is notorious for its culture of gun violence.
One more addition to the litany of gun tragedy.
Not to mention all the gun accidents. We know many kill kids. The PSAs and news stories make it seem as if the accidents kill thousands of kids every year.
Bang, 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 bang.
But the Centers for Disease Control says the real number for kids this age is fewer than 50. That's still terrible. I understand why these demonstrators say we need more gun laws.
We want sensible gun control legislation. We are the voice of the majority of Americans. It is time we were heard.
And the media seem to want gun control.
Why is it so hard for Congress to pass a gun control bill?
But guess what? The Centers for Disease Control recently completed a review of studies of various types of gun control, waiting periods, registration and licensing, and bans on certain firearms. It could not document that these rules have reduced violent crime. How can this be? Signing the Brady Bill into law didn't help?
Don't tell me this bill will not make a difference. That is not true.
Sorry, the government can't say it has made a difference. One reason is that the bad guys tend to ignore gun laws.
When I had a gun, I didn't care what laws they had. So I'm not worried about the government saying that I can't carry a gun. I'm going to carry a gun anyway.
These maximum security felons in New Jersey scoff at measures like the Brady Law.
I'm not going in the store to buy no gun, so I could care less if they had a background check or not.
I bought it from the street, from a source. There's guns everywhere. If you got money, you can get a gun.
A study funded by the Department of Justice confirmed what these prisoners said. Most criminals buy their guns illegally and easily. And get this, the study said the felons say the thing they fear most is not the police, not time in prison, but you, another American who might be armed.
And when you go to rob somebody you don't know, it makes it harder because you don't know what to expect out of them.
It's a reason many states are passing gun uncontrol. They're allowing citizens to carry guns with them. It's called concealed carry or right to carry. And it comforts women like Laura Jones.
It's a safety thing. I feel better knowing I have a way to protect myself.
But many people are horrified at the idea of right to carry laws.
That is frightening. Can you imagine just walking up and down the street knowing that 90% of the people you pass has a deadly weapon and you could be their next target, I think that we'd be living in a state of terror.
But, surprise, 36 states already have right to carry laws. And people in these states are not living in terror. We called state safety officials in all these states, and not one reported an upsurge in crime. Why? Well, maybe because guns are used twice or 3 times as often for defensive uses as they are to commit crimes. That's what happened at this car dealership. The owner had a gun, so when these 2 armed men came in to rob him, he shot it, and they ran. Studies on defensive use of guns find this kind of thing happens at least 700,000 times a year.
I just reacted. It was a life or death thing, and I think you react.
Armed men broke into Susan Gonzalez's house and shot her. She grabbed her husband's gun and started firing.
I figured if I could shoot one of them, even if we both died, someone would know who had been in my home.
She killed one of the intruders. The other ran away.
I don't necessarily like guns still, but I carry one because I know now what can happen and why you do need a gun.
It's about the weapons, the guns. Where did the killer get them?
They're shocked at how easy it is to purchase a gun.
It is simply too easy to obtain a firearm.
The belief that gun control prevents gun crime is why many were upset this spring when
a bombshell court ruling could put handguns back in D.C. homes.
A court threw out Washington, D.C.'s 30-year ban on guns. And that's outrageous, said public officials.
More guns, very simply, lead to more violence.
I don't know how anyone could be serious in saying that, because the gun violence went up when they banned handguns.
Tom Palmer's one of the plaintiffs who sued D.C. over the right to have a gun. He's correct about gun violence going up. Since Washington's gun law passed, the murder rate actually increased, even while America's murder rate dropped. It's because guns can also save lives, says Palmer, as one saved his years ago in California. Now, you may think that carrying a gun, as Palmer did, is illegal in most of America, but it's not.
Many people don't realize that today in America, in about 40 states, it is legal to carry a concealed weapon on your person.
And in those 40 states, there is no more violent crime or murder than in states where guns are restricted. These maximum security felons said they fear an armed victim much more than the police.
When you go to rob somebody you don't know, it makes it harder.
And they said gun laws don't matter to them. They don't obey them.
I'm not worried about the government saying that I can't carry a gun. I'm going to carry a gun anyway.
It's impossible to know exactly how often guns stop criminals, because who reports a crime that doesn't happen? But people use guns in self-defense every day.
Often just showing a gun is enough to prevent the crime.
Joyce says having a gun changes the balance of power. And here's a controversial idea. Some Virginia Tech students say they wish students had been allowed to carry guns, because one of them might have stopped the killer before he shot so many people. And that's what happened 5 years ago at the Appalachian School of Law. Hearing shots, 2 students went to their cars, got their guns, and helped restrain this shooter until police arrested him.
One of the things that the gun does is it equalizes unequals. My mom told me when I was a young boy, because she was armed, she was never afraid.
So, gun control isn't necessarily crime control. In fact, the National Academy of Sciences reviewed hundreds of studies and could not document a single gun regulation that reduced violent crime or murder.
If someone gets into your house, which would you rather have, a handgun or a telephone? You can call the police if you want, and they'll get there, and they'll take a picture of your dead body. But they can't get there in time to save your life. The first line of defense is you.
Criminals prefer an unarmed public. Our nation's worst crime statistics and most horrific recent events have taken place in areas that are known to be no-carry zones for law-abiding citizens. There's a reason schools make such good targets for gun violence. Only the criminal will be armed. And another viewer wrote, Canada has the same firearms heritage as the U.S., yet a fraction of the crime. Reason? Guns are not the problem. People are the problem.
Gun control hinges on the idea that so-called gun violence is epidemic across America. As President Obama said about the 2012 Aurora, Colorado Batman movie theater shooting, quote,
Every day, the number of young people we lose to violence is about the same as the number of people we lost in that movie theater. For every Columbine or Virginia Tech, there are dozens gunned down on the streets of Chicago and Atlanta. Here in New
What he didn't say, however, is that every day, 290 people are killed by FDA-approved prescription drugs. And that's the conservative number published by the Journal of the American Medical Association. The source of this information? JAMA, Volume 284, Number 4, July 26, 2000, authored by Dr. Barbara Starfield, MD, of the Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health. That study, which is 12 years old, and drug deaths have risen considerably since then, documents 106,000 deaths per year from the adverse effects of FDA-approved prescription medications. To reach this number from outbreaks of violent shootings, you'd have to see an Aurora, Colorado Batman movie massacre take place every hour of every day, 365 days a year. If a massacre of people using slugs of lead is bad, why is a massacre of people using deadly chemicals perfectly acceptable?